Geneva, and we have the sort of already our colleagues preparing for the summer holiday. And it's great to have you all today for our traditional last Tuesday in the month briefing, summarizing, as always, the main developments in the field of digital policy during the previous month, and also doing a bit of a prediction for the next month. Today we will focus on 2 months period on July and August in our prediction phase. Let us start immediately with a summary of the main developments in previous month. We have the following meetings. The June started with Eurodig, European Internet Governance Forum in Sofia, Bulgaria. Then there was on 7th and 8th G7 summit in Germany, and it was interesting. We did based on analysis that we did of the final concluding document. There was very little references to the digital issues. The major focus was on security, climate change, and other issues. Then in New York, the preparatory process started in a way slowly with informal consultations on 10th and 11th in June, preparatory process for the VUSIS +10 high-level meeting. On the 15th of June, UN Human Rights Council started the 29th session, which, as you will see later on, was very interesting, not only because of the appointment of Special Rapporteur for privacy, but also increasing digitalization of human rights discussion, as a few of our colleagues, diplomats, Miguel and others noticed in their reflections. On 17 and 19, the Council of Europe hosted their annual Octopus Conference, 2015, this year focusing on cooperation against cybercrime. Very interesting discussion on the perspective of cyber issues, of the law enforcement perspective on cyber issues, and what law enforcement agencies need from the cyber community. And on between 21st and 25th of June, we had the 53rd ICANN meeting in Buenos Aires, and we will hear later on from Nigel what happened in Buenos Aires and what were the major developments. Well, let us start now with our traditional barometer summary of the main developments. Cybersecurity keeps a high profile, and in June we had quite a few developments in cybersecurity, and one more of the same is continuation of the attacks. In this case, one of the major attacks was on the Office of Personnel Management of the U.S. federal government, with the reveal of the millions of data, including classified data of the security and intelligence officials. Another important attack, which was attack on Kaspersky company, and it marks the end of one unspoken tacit rule in cyber community, and this rule is not to attack the cybersecurity industry. Symantec, McAfee, Kaspersky, and other companies. Now Kaspersky caught attack. They followed the attack it was a Stuxnet style attack, and they reported it was reported in various media. NATO Secretary General in his speech in Washington clearly removed any controversy and ambiguity about applicability of the Article 5. It is Article 5 mean in reality? Does it mean the cyber retaliation of NATO, or use of the other traditional military means? And he remained vague about this. He indicated that NATO will use all appropriate and relevant means in order to protect its members from potential cyber attacks. Therefore, cyber security remains high on the agenda. I was last week in Vienna at the OSCE. We had the Vienna Cyber Diplomacy Day, and as you are aware of, in OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, cybersecurity is high on the agenda. They introduced the first set of confidence-building measures, They're now negotiating the second set of confidence-building measures. I was impressed by one fact. OSCE generally is more politicized, especially after the Ukraine crisis, than international organizations in Geneva. And you can feel it from the room and from discussion, question, and comments. But one impressive aspect is that member states of OSCE said, okay, we have serious differences on security and other issues. And mainly differences are between NATO member states and Russia. But they said, let us see what we can do practically while we are trying to sort out these big issues, what we can do practically in order to reduce the risks from the cyber attacks. And they adopted the first measure of confidence, set of confidence-building measures. It is somehow unnoticed development in Geneva ICT circles, but I would suggest that we pay more attention to this development. Currently, Serbia is, Switzerland was the chair last year. They played a prominent role, Serbia this year, and Germany will take over a chairmanship next year. And according to the signals from Vienna, Germany is going to put cyber issues high on the agenda of the OSCE. The cybersecurity barometer indicates it was very high on policy agenda. What happened with the global IG architecture? We here refer to IG architecture versus +10 discussions and other related developments. As we indicated, in June there was a first meeting, consultations meeting prior to official start of the process, of the preparatory process for versus +10. And again, you had the traditional division and discussions about the participation. Should it be only government-driven? What is the level of involvement of non-state actors? To what extent versus principles should be applied? And you had a traditional, more or less expected debate with agreement that it will be clearly process-driven by governments, and United Arab Emirates and Latvia are co-chairing or co-moderating the process. But there will be extensive involvement in non-state actors, more or less in versus spirit. We indicated that at our barometer exercise that there were no major developments, especially comparing to the previous month of May, where we had many developments on IG architecture in Geneva. IANA Transition, we will now hear from Nigel with a summary basically of what happened in Buenos Aires. There are two issues. One is question of IANA Transition, and second one is related to overall activities of ICANN, including a question of the domain name system and other related issues. Nigel, quick summary of developments in Buenos Aires, please. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Nigel Hickson. I'll be very brief. So on the IANA transition, the two components. One is the proposal for the transition itself. So this is the transition proposal replacing the role of NTIA in the IANA process, and that proposal was, or the proposal was agreed, that came out of the naming community. So all three proposals from the naming community, from the numbers community, and from the IETF, that's the protocol parameters, have been agreed. They will go now to the IANA coordination group that will put the three proposals together. This is mainly an editorial task. The three proposals are, well, not the same, but they can be stuck together fairly well. And then that will go out to consultation. So there'll be a proposal coming out towards the end of July for consultation. So that's the transition proposal. The parallel track, as Jovan said, is the accountability track, and this is the accountability measures that are required by the naming community and other communities to ensure that I remain accountable after the transition. And those accountability measures include replacement of the board, if the community thinks the board have gone nuts or have been overtaken by commercial interest or whatever, rejection of the budget, and a number of other issues. There was a consultation on the accountability proposal, and the results of that consultation were debated in Buenos Aires. There'll be more face-to-face meetings in the next couple of weeks, including a large session in Paris in the middle of July. And then another proposal on accountability will go out to consultation at the end of July. And hopefully that will be then finalized, and that will be approved by ICANN. and then the accountability and the transition proposal will be sent to the NTIA, hopefully around the end of October.
Thank you, Nigel, for the really condensed summary of what happened in Buenos Aires. And one of the points which was basically echoed in discussion is that the deadline of the 30th of September is not likely to be basically met, and that the process will be most likely prolonged for the 9 months. Therefore, we can expect some sort of official transition in mid 2016, June or July 2016. Yeah, thank you. Okay, the next major development was discussion on online privacy and data protection. Just a few kilometers from us here, the Human Rights Council has its 28th session, and they are discussing appointment of the special rapporteur on privacy. There are 3 candidates from Estonia, Malta, and Spain, and they will announce this appointment on Friday. What was also related to other important developments related to online privacy and data protection is the report of the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression. It was a report on anonymity and encryption. But in this report, there is a clear link between the question of freedom of expression, or more precise, freedom of opinion, and privacy and data protection. As those of you who are involved in the Human Rights Council discussion, there is sometimes a separation between 2 issues, and the countries that support these issues, like Germany, Brazil, are more sort of vocal in supporting the question of privacy and data protection, and Sweden, UK, Baltic states on the question of freedom of expression. And what was interesting, I think very useful for discussion on human rights issues, is this bridge between 2 fields, where the Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression clearly said that you cannot separate these 2 issues, and the question of freedom of opinion depends on the privacy protection. In order to develop opinion, individuals and citizens need privacy of their communication before they express it publicly. Therefore, I suggest that we consult this report as an important report. While we're still on the UN Human Rights Council, there was another development hinted by our students diplomats in our group, is the more and more appearance of digital discussions in traditional human rights issues, like a report on the question of justice and the court system is very, very digital. Therefore, now increased level of digitalization of human rights discussion, if we can call it that way. And we can expect that process. What does it practically mean? That we'll need more and more expertise in Human Rights Council on the internet-related issues, beyond the traditional one, freedom of expression and now online privacy, but also for the periodical reviews by countries and other specific fields, like, for example, child protection. We can expect more development in that field. Closer to sort of regional context, Council of the European Union reached a political agreement on the proposed data protection regulation. Just to give you, it sounds a bit vague and bureaucratic, but we are speaking about, in a way, conclusion of the process of discussion which lasted for almost 3 years. This is now the proposal which should be discussed with Parliament and Member States. And it has been already criticized mainly by civil society as basically watering down the question of data protection. Therefore, this issue will remain high on the agenda in Europe, and it was still in our barometer indicated as a highly prominent issue. And on net neutrality, there was a controversy surrounding the EU, as it's according to, again, media coverage, the European Council is willing to trade net neutrality for ending roaming charges. According to the rumors of Brussels, and we are now indicating we are here on the level of, well, relatively well-informed rumors, because it has been appearing in media, is that the possible deal is that there will be removal of the roaming charges and the more, let's say, pro-telecom industry net neutrality regulation, therefore less net neutrality. and we'll see if it is going to be confirmed in the coming weeks more officially. Nigel would like to comment. Yes, direct update today. Mm-hmm. Well, Nigel is providing the latest update. The session was finished at 2 o'clock this morning.
I'm sorry, so sorry. Yeah, so the trilogue finished early this morning, and so essentially out of this single market package that was introduced 3 years ago, the two remaining elements, roaming and net neutrality, were agreed upon. So it's now has to be ratified by the Parliament in the next couple of days, but that will be a done deal because it's gone through the trilogue. So there is a deal on net neutrality. Various people have been saying in the last few hours that it's not as strong as it could have been, but there is a deal, and there is a deal to essentially remove all roaming charges by the end of 2017 for the intra-European Union area.
Well, it is the major telecommunication development, and probably it is a reasonable compromise these days, especially around the Greek crisis. The compromise word is frequently used in the EU lingo in Brussels and everywhere. And I would say that in spite of the criticism of the net neutrality side, it's a relatively reasonable compromise. Obviously, we'll have to see in details what does it involve on the side of net neutrality. Thank you, Nigel, for the latest update. I hope you didn't follow it this morning at 2 o'clock in the morning. No, okay. On e-commerce, we have a relatively quiet month. There was the local development. Swiss Federal Tax Administration has ruled that no VAT applies to Bitcoin in Switzerland. And it's an interesting development because Switzerland is one of the first countries which explicitly ruled on the question of the VAT and Bitcoin. And we can expect other countries to have some updates on this issue. We didn't have any major development on ICANN and new domains and jurisdiction. There is the continuation on discussion on the .sax with the Canadian authorities, but nothing major. There was also a letter of the few US congressmen on the question of .amazon. They're trying to reopen discussion on the .amazon and to have some sort of ruling in the favor of the Amazon company. But those were not the major developments in this field. What can we expect ahead of us in July? On Friday, we should have the closing of the 29th session of the Human Rights Council and appointment of the Special Rapporteur on Privacy. On the 1st and 2nd of July, there will be first versus preparatory meeting of the member states in New York, followed by informal interactive versus stakeholder consultations. Therefore, the versus plus 10 process is now officially starting after the preliminary discussions in June. On the 6th and 10th of July, there will be an ECOSOC substantive session, and as you know, the part of the versus development is going through the ECOSOC CSTD reports and other developments. Therefore, we can expect another line of the preparation for versus plus 10 coming through the ECOSOC. On the 9th and 10th of July, there will be a meeting of the BRICS country summit in Ufa, Russia. And this is an interesting development because there are some indications that BRICS country may extend their closer cooperation that they had for example, financial issues, the establishment of the bank, to the cyber field. And basically, it's not clear in what direction will basically go India and Brazil, while the other countries have the agreement to have a more intergovernmental cooperation when it comes to the BRICS countries in the cyber issues. And it is considered to be one of the major developments that can influence versus plus 10 G77 position and overall IG debate. In Addis Ababa, there will be financing for development meeting, time for global action. And although it is not directly linked to the cyber issues, it is going to be one of the major preparatory meetings for SDGs. And question of the cyber and the development and internet issues will be mentioned. ITF will have its 93rd meeting in Prague, and Teresa will attend it, and Teresa will be in Prague, and that will hear from about the latest developments over there. In August, Latin American countries will host their IGF on 3rd and 5th of August, and there will be third AFICTA summit on ICT in Johannesburg, South Africa, between 31st August and 7th and 4th of September. Therefore, we can expect slight slowing down of activities on the internet field during the summer, and then that's more or less all on the general development. When it comes to the Geneva Internet Platform, we're proud that we published the Recipe for Peace, Rights and Well-being, the cookbook, written by partners of the International Geneva Perception Change Project. It is an interesting way how our team describe IG activities and Diplo activities through the metaphor of cooking. And next issue of Digital Watch, and I can reveal one of the secrets, we'll have one article, how to cook the IG speech. What do you need to put into typical IG speech in order to taste well, good? To have not to, then there will be different variations with some spices or tofu-like without any special flavor. Therefore, we'll be quite involved with this cooking and food metaphor over the next few weeks. We had an event last month on jurisdiction and dispute resolution in the Internet era on 7th and 11th of June during the conference with the University of Geneva. An interesting discussion of immunities and jurisdiction and in the field of Internet governance. On 19th of June, a Law of the Sea event of exploring parallel between Law of the Sea and Law of the Internet. Is it inspiring analogy? And the discussion is still open. There are quite a few interesting analogies, especially related to jurisdiction. As you know, the Law of the Sea implies different jurisdictions. You have inner sea, where the country have more or less total jurisdiction like a territory. Then you have territorial sea, you have exclusive economic zone, and you have open sea. And we will try to explore how this analogy of different level of jurisdiction could apply to the Internet. On 26th of June, we had the Vienna Cyber Diplomacy Day at the OSCE at the Hofburg Palace, and the lovely setting where basically then they negotiated Vienna Congress 200 years ago. Therefore, we use a lot this parallel between 200 years ago negotiation of Vienna Congress and cyber issues. This is more or less all that happened and the Diplo side. Now it's time for questions and suggestions, both for questions and suggestions from colleagues here in the room. Peter is first, and I'm sorry, Richard, this time you lost the competition. It's usually Richard is the first to ask the question.
Sorry.
And we also will hear from the...
So, just to add to the agenda of July, it's a local event, but on 9th of July, the UNIDIR, the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, organizes the Cyber Stability Conference. It's one of the cyber security event series of the events. It will be happening on 9th of July here in Geneva in Palais de Nation.
At the UNIDIR at Palais de Nation.
At room number something,
Okay,
I don't know, but yeah, on 9th of July. Thanks.
Peter. And then I guess, Richard, you lost your privileged position to have the first question.
No,
Peter was faster this time.
I'm going to start being number 2 now from now on. Yeah, I just wanted to come back to what...
Just for online community, Richard Hill, please.
Wanted to come back to what Nigel's summary of the ICANN situation, which I thought was, as usual, very accurate. But then I wanted to make 2 points. The first one is that, as Nigel described the process, it's correct. So the names community has now come up with a proposal and sent it to the ICG. But I think that that's prejudging the entire situation, because what happened is that there was a first names proposal, which got a lot of comments. Some of the comments were accommodated in the new one, but not all of them. But the new one did not go to a second round of public comment. It was directly approved within the ICANN. So it went through an ICANN approval process, that's clear, but it didn't go through any kind of public consultation, and now it's going to go to the ICG. So that is, to me, skipping a step because this process was supposed to be open to the public and not just be an ICANN process. And in particular, I've already sent a complaint to the ICG saying that the proposal is incomplete because a lot of detail is missing. It's found in the annexes, some of which even have square brackets. And some of the extremely important things like jurisdiction, which I'll come back to, you don't find until you get down to those annexes, which are actually not officially part of the proposal. So I told the ICG, I think, first of all, there's a process issue because there was no public consultation. It came to you on the second round. And secondly, it's incomplete, so you should send it back. Now, I'm sure Nigel was perfectly correct. There's a 0 chance that they're going to send it back. And in particular, and also the accountability group has done this, it's now perfectly clear that the jurisdiction will remain in the U.S. Very likely ICANN's bylaws will be changed to make it very difficult to move the jurisdiction anywhere else. But what's particularly interesting is that this issue is not on the table. The accountability group made a summary of the comments that they received, which was pretty accurate, except that it didn't talk about jurisdiction, whereas there were many comments raising the jurisdiction issue. So jurisdiction now seems to be deliberately taken off the table for obvious reasons.
Thank you, Richard. And now we have questions from or comments.
Just one short question. It was the special rapporteur. When will he be for privacy? Is there a date on when he will be announced or selected?
We have here friends from who follow closely the Human Rights Council on Friday. It will be announced on Friday. Yes. Okay. We have a quite lively debate and comments on questions on freedom of expression in online space. We cannot hear Nigel. That's fine. Now they. No, but they heard him later on. It was the the language is always ambiguous, that one has to be careful. Okay. Law of the sea. There was discussion of the law of the sea. Yeah, that was good comment. That the concept of the law of the sea and the possible analogy was mentioned by Admiral Michel Rogers, the director of NSA, at the conference in Tallinn in Estonia. And Richard was at this conference and he was quoted by Reuters on commenting on this statement. And it is interesting analogy, and we did a bit of analysis and we are preparing some sort of small study what you can use between the law of the sea, what is the basically analogy between law of the sea and the internet. There are two major elements. One is freedom of navigation, which law of the sea indicates, especially on the high sea. And probably this is the bridge, analogical bridge. And the second is the commons. High sea and oceans are considered as the commons. And now, should the internet be considered as a commons, as a global public good or global public resource? Those are, I would say, probably the two analogies that inspired Admiral Rogers to make that this link. Now, as always, when you drill into the details, there are now more and more differences between the two spaces and questionable analogies. We discussed possibility of using the common heritage of mankind analogy, was mentioned by Dr. Trigona. There is a question of jurisdiction, which is very interesting because law of the sea implies a very sort of shaded jurisdiction. You have the inner sea, and as we discussed, you have different type of jurisdictions of a national state. Therefore, that will be an interesting discussion to what extent the law of the sea could be used as analogy for the internet. Richard.
Hill here. Yes, I was actually there. I was lucky to hear Admiral Rogers' presentation. You should see if you can get a transcript of it, actually, if they have it, because that's not his approach. So your approach is, I think, correct. But his approach is also correct, and I think it's also interesting to work that in. He started by looking at the history of the Internet, how it was created, and explained basically why, because of that, we don't have security. And then he made the point that as the Internet is becoming more important, security is becoming more of an issue. And so we can only solve the security issue by cooperation. We know that. That's the kind of thing we hear also all the time. And then that's when he made the step. He said, well, as a seaman, we had similar problems with the sea, and how did we solve them? With the law of the sea. So he was really coming at it more from the security threat and how to address the security threat, and using the law of the sea as an analogy for that. Now, I don't know anything about the law of the sea, but I suppose it has things in it about piracy and protecting merchant shipping and stuff like that. And I think he was coming at it more from that angle.
Thank you, Richard. It's very interesting analogy. Also, there is historical analogy, because when the Hugo Grotius, who made the concept of the free sea or open sea in 16th century, he was basically at that time hired by Dutch government. Dutch government started facing problems with their navigation, because the national, mainly pirates, but here and there some local rulers were basically intercepting and stopping their sort of ships which were sailing towards Asia mainly. And then they introduced the concept of the open sea and the free navigation, and also added the question of security. Therefore, this is an interesting aspect that also Dutch were prompted to develop this concept, and that they hired basically as a consultant, in today's terminology, Hugo Grotius, to develop the concept. And he wrote the book, and it later on became part of customary law, and today it is a part of international law codified by the Law of the Sea Convention. Well, I would say that it's probably a good analogy, and more precise analogy, which of Admiral Rogers, why, and it has also historical element. It is security triggered, and it also provides the element of freedom of expression. Miguel, please. Good. Yeah, we'll now feel. Could you, Miguel? Yep. Sure.
Thank you. About the law of the sea, I wanted to say that it's based on Montego Bay Convention.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Miguel. Could you just introduce yourself, and maybe while you're intervening, if I know you are coming from a landlocked country from Paraguay, but you will make definitely some reflection on law of the sea. You may also reflect on the Human Rights Council, and you brought this question of digitalization of the different aspects. Please introduce.
Thank you very much. I'm Miguel Candia with the Permanent Mission of Paraguay here in Geneva. And well, what I wanted to comment first is the fact that we are not talking only about REST comments. We may talk about in space as well. In digital space, we may talk about res nullius. There is some sort of sensation that is a thing that nobody can control, actually. So just to keep that element in as well. And turning back to your request, well, it's a personal view, particularly. But yeah, I think the Human Rights Council is getting to understand more and more the implications of the era we're living on, the digital era, and issues that are being influenced by the internet, the ICTs, and the digital era itself are being more taken into account. And not only in the special or the more particular rights, such as freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, access to information, but also in the way we are using these rights to fulfill others more fundamentals, such as education. So yeah, we could see, as you said, that digitalization of the Human Rights Council is not going to take over, but it's going to be more and more influenced. And I think discussions are going to go into that in a slow manner, but they are going to be more and more digitalized. Yeah.
That's what you clearly indicated. There is a trend which started accelerating definitely this year.
Yes, particularly this year. For me, in the last 2 sessions, we are seeing more and more of this trend coming more clear. And I hope it's going to go that way, because it's a reality we have to face.
Great. Thank you, Miguel. Well, with this comment, since we will close our briefing for June, you will receive at the beginning of July our Digital Watch, which is our monthly publication summarizing the main developments, both online, and we will share a few printed copies. And now Nigel has just another comment before we close the session.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chairman, Nigel Hickson. I was going to say something on the ICANN meeting that wasn't to do with accountability, but I should have said it earlier. So just two other things that happened at the ICANN meeting last week, which I think were quite significant. One was a statement by the Indian minister, the Indian ICT minister, by a video link to the ICANN meeting, in which he reflected on the importance of internet and the importance of involving all stakeholders in the governance of the internet. So this was a fairly powerful sort of affirmation of the multi-stakeholder approach that India would like to see. He also said that he'd like to see to ensure that ICANN became a global organization. So he had other things to say as well in line with that. And I think the other thing to mention, of course, is that Fadi Chahadi, our CEO, is stepping down in March 2016, and the ICANN meeting kicked off if you like, a new selection process under which his replacement would be found. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Therefore, it's the right time to apply now. If we have a candidate in the room on the online community, please don't waste this opportunity. Peter, you will apply?
No. Just to add to what Nigel said about the India's position towards the multi-stakeholder involvement. As I heard, yes, indeed, the sector ministry, the Ministry of ICT or whatever it's called, they are indeed announced that they favor more than before the multi-stakeholder involvement. But nevertheless, the Indian Foreign Ministry is still holding the previous position in favor of bigger involvement of the government. So it's in India, it's it's divided. Yeah, you cannot say that they are changed their position yet. Thank you.
Or maybe they intentionally, like many other countries, create constructive ambiguity. Therefore, you never know what is.
I mean, Nigel, it's just the Indian position. I'm not claiming that one statement is but he did say he was speaking on behalf of the Prime Minister. So, well, yeah.
Now we have a lecture here.
Yes, Richard Hill here. Yes, I and several other colleagues, including people from India, looked at that very carefully. And I think it's interesting because he had all of the code words in there. So he did indeed talk about multi-stakeholderism, which was unusual for India. But he also said it has to be democratic, which is a code word for not letting private companies run things. And then he said something which was very significant and can be interpreted two ways. He said India should work with like-minded countries. Now, traditionally, that's meant the BRICS and the G77. In this context, it may have signaled a shift to move rather to the European, OECD, US side. So I think what was intended in that speech is not clear. Either it was a compromise, so the minister consulted a bunch of people and everybody put in their favorite pet words and it means nothing, or it's signaling a shift. And if it's signaling a shift, it's not entirely clear what shift it is. So Nigel's interpretation that it's a shift is perfectly reasonable. And in fact, my Indian colleagues were jumping up and down saying this is terrible. On the other hand, I think it's more ambiguous than that. And I think probably we need time to see actually what happens. Because sometimes, as we know, these speeches, don't have much of an effect. I remember one guy who promised he would close Guantanamo. That doesn't seem to have happened yet.
Yeah, then we'll probably have a clearer idea after the BRICS summit in July. Thank you. Well, with this sort of detailed analysis of position of one of the actors in digital debate, I would like to close our monthly briefing. I wish you a pleasant and enjoyable summer. We have lovely weather here in Geneva, and well, I heard that we can expect heat wave in Geneva over the next few days. Have a lot of fun and see you on the 25th of August, where we are going to run the next bi-monthly briefing for July and August. All the best. Bye-bye to remote participants, and thank you for participation.